Hey, hello, Priscilla. Hello, Denise.
Good
And hello
afternoon.
out there.
Hello,
Guys,
Elisa and Denise. Nice to see you guys.
nice to be with you and nice to be with everybody who's joining us, whatever part of the world you're in and whatever time of the day or night it is. We are glad to be with you. And why are we here? We are trauma survivors and we're walking each other home. What does that mean? That means that as a trauma survivor for much of my life, I was taught to shut up, don't tell anybody, don't share any of this stuff. And then other things you might have heard, like, get over it, let bygones be bygones. That's in the past. Don't keep bringing up get off the pity pot. Stop making the present all about the past. And those things were all injunctions to stop me and stop us. There are considerable and ongoing injunctions that stop us from claiming the truth, which is that being a trauma survivor affected us at the time we were traumatized, which for many of us was pre-birth or birth, ongoing. And it affected our brains in such a way that our brains will react whether we choose to have them react or not. And what that means is I need to consciously say, as a trauma survivor, okay, Holly Elissa, or to one of my little girls inside that's getting upset, okay, sweetie, I know that you're taking this personally, but just remind yourself, it's not about me. It's not about me. So, my friends, we're here to be honest. We're here to be safe. We're here to be original. We're here to be authentic, and we are here to be connecting so that trauma survivors all over the world can say, I have a home to come to where nobody's going to judge me, where people are going to listen to me, and where I am going to intuitively, with my heart, soul, and brain, understand what these people are talking about, because I've been there too. So I want briefly to invite, and by the way, I'm Holly Elissa Bruno. I'll be 80 at the end of this year. And I've written a lot, mostly about law, emotional intelligence, that kind of thing. And then I got it that I needed to write about the core. And the core for me is that I'm a trauma survivor. So my book is called Happiness is Running Through the Streets to Find You, Translating Trauma's Harsh Legacy into Healing. And you can find that. Amazon's hard sometimes, but you can find it through contacting me or contacting the press, which is Exchange Press in Nebraska, wherever the university is in Nebraska, Lincoln, maybe. Okay, so that's our background. I just want to ask, now we've got three of us, and I want to ask each one of my colleagues here to say, what is it with you that brings you to want to do this podcast on walking each other home? And Denise, let's start with you, hon.
Hi, I'm Denise Rokicki. I'm a trauma survivor from childhood and thriver, now I call myself. And I'm here because I'm really want to engage in the continuous improvement plan, which means working always on healing. And this is my way to contribute to my own healing and to other healings.
Thanks, sweetie. And Priscilla, how about you, hon? What's
So,
your desire to be here?
yes. So, one, thank you because you guys have given me the nice welcoming, and it always feels good to be around not just wonderful women, but people that I can identify with. And part of why I decide to be here, it's my self-healing journey, what the community means to me, and why it's important that, it's like walking each other home. What does that mean and why? So, as a trauma survivor, and a person who is consistent, who understand the impact of trauma and how healing goes, it's nice to be here and be able to share that.
So glad we're all together. And I know one of us for sure. In fact, Priscilla, you can speak really so well in Spanish. If you want to do some of that sometime, we have Spanish listeners, and I'm sure we can pull it all together. Denise and I are not as great at all.
Yo
But
tengo español
poco,
poquito
poco.
nomás.
Claro
Sí.
que sí, y yo las ayudo con mucho amor.
Ah,
My
sí,
favorite
and
my favorite sentence is yo soy una maestra para los niños 3 años y 4 años.
ah, très bien, très bien. I'll do the French thing. So we're just glad, whoever is walking with us today, we're glad you're here. And I'm going to do some spontaneous things here. We want definitely to hear from Priscilla more about her identified specialty. She has many of them, but one of them is trauma bonding. So that issue is going to come up a number of times, that language, what's behind it. I want to start us off in a very spontaneous and a spontaneous way. Why am I doing this? Because when I'll speak for myself, when I'm in the moment, truth comes out. And when I hear other people speak the truth, that is so empowering. The truth sets me free as a trauma survivor. That is simply true for me. And in the law, there are these fascinating 19th century edicts, one of them which is if a person's dying declaration, the last thing you say before you die is admissible in court, even if it's hearsay, even if somebody heard you say it, it's admissible in court. And why is that an exception to this hard clamp down this rule that says we can't admit hearsay because it'll be a he said, she said, all over the place mess. Why on earth would they say that a man's last words would be admissible in court, whether they were hearsay or not? And it's connected with another legal principle, which is called the spontaneous declaration principle. If someone says something spontaneously, it goes directly from their lips to the ears of God, and nobody wants to get caught in the lie. To God. So let's do something spontaneous. And I have a question for each one of you. And I'm not looking for any answer, but your truth. And folks that are listening, honeys, we want to ask you, how would you respond to this question too? And here it is. In the last few days, just in your recent history, how have you greeted a challenge, knowing you're a trauma survivor and doing well, feeling like I did that well, in part because you are a trauma survivor? Does that make sense? Greeting a challenge that comes your way. And in the past, you might have said, I can't do that, or I don't know how to do that. But because I'm a trauma survivor, I knew I could do it. And I knew I could do it in a new way that was healing. And so any of the three of us can talk about that. I had something in mind, but I'm going to go back and find something new. So Denise, if you've got something, if you're ready, great. You go, girl.
Okay. So I worked my story time gig at a birthday party yesterday, and my usual crowd is 0 to 5 years old. But in this family, it was all older cousins, and they were just going to celebrate Annie, the little 2-year-old who comes to story time weekly at the coffee shop. And so I know that my material engages her and she loves it and all that. But I was very concerned about the older kids. I have always been mostly drawn to 0 to 5s, and the older kids kind of scare me, basically. So, but I went and did it, and it was really fun, and it turned out good. And the reason was because I'm dependable. You can count on me, and that's that's why it worked. That's one of my coping skills of being a survivor, is to maintain my dependability and reliability, and so it went well.
So you show up, and I have just one question for you, girl. When you discovered it wasn't your usual group that you're really at home with, those little guys, what did and you brought your dependability, and I show up and I don't quit, my word is my word. What went on inside you, and how did it translate to your action when you decided, I can do this, I can do this? How did you translate to the older folk?
So the way that I did was I turned them all into helpers. When I went to the door and they were all big kids, I told them, "Oh, I have a lot of things to carry in. If you guys could be my helpers, that would be awesome." And they all volunteered to help, and they helped, and they maintained that helper status throughout the 45-minute gig.
You know what Fred Rogers, you guys both early childhood folk, you know what Fred Rogers' mother said to him? In a
Look for the
crisis,
helpers.
look for the helpers. There's always going to be somebody there that's going to do something constructive. Look for them.
Yeah,
Hey,
Fred Rogers, he's one of my idols.
yeah, and people put him down because he was a sensitive, caring man. Well, hell, he's exactly what was necessary. And
Right.
look,
Surprise,
yeah,
surprise.
absolutely. So Priscilla, how about you, sweetie? What's an experience, and it feels like you've had a bunch of them recently, where you greeted a situation and it tended to like try to push you back to being a survivor, and yet you greeted it and said, I'm going to be true to myself. Can you give us an example of that?
Absolutely. You're right. I've had different situations, and I believe, and you guys could tell me your thoughts, but as trauma survival, it's those triggers, it's those feelings coming up and showing up, and you just, sometimes people say it's like a wave coming, and I just don't know, and I'm feeling overwhelmed, and I just feeling suffocated. So one example that I used a lot, it's being aware of my environment, being mindful of what's going on, and starting to connect that feeling and validating um, what I'm experiencing in the moment. Um, yeah, that I
Can
and
you give us an example of that, sweetie, just so we can picture?
so an example of it, it's like right now I'm going through a transition, and being aware that I'm going through that transition, and that those transitions are scary, and I'm taking a leap of faith. And of course, I'm going to feel scary. And of course, I'm going to feel anxious, especially because I don't know. I'm as a person who has gone through different adversity, one of the main things that I've experienced is feeling that the people that are supposed to love me has betrayed me. So coming in, taking a leap of faith into a space of unknown feels very scary and very anxious. So reminding myself that all these feelings is because of what happened to me, but then I have all this to share, and allowing myself in that space.
Thank you. I love that. And what the three of us can discover together, along with the people that are with us listening, is that all of us have switched jobs. All of us have taken really scary steps when it comes to careers. And you know what? To me, that's part of being a survivor, because I can't live anybody else's life. That's a command I have on me that I accept fully. I can't live anybody else's life. I was taught to live other people's lives for them. I remember going to survivors meeting, and somebody asked, let's talk about this topic. Were you allowed to have a dream of your own? And most of us were like struggling with that, because we had to take care of so many other people and take care of so many other people's well-being. And I watched this woman's face, and it came to light, and I said, she's going to say something I need to hear. So I listened to her, and she said something that really stayed with me 20 years later. She said, oh, I was allowed to have a dream as long as it was somebody else's. She became a teacher because that's what women did That's what women did. Anyway, as you're listening, folk, Priscilla and Denise, what are we already saying in common that we've got? And also people at home, what are you feeling? What are you sensing that you've got that's similar to what Priscilla was talking about, starting something new, and then Denise was starting something new. So let's look. I want to share something that's it's kind of oozy. It's not like an actual concrete experience, but it is real to me. And I'm going to try to do that and cut right to the chase. I am part of something in my field, which is called the Early Childhood Wisdom Initiative. And that's a group of, it was started out to be about 10 people, and we were selected by these real elders in the profession. And we were called together as elders, mostly based on age, but because we continue at whatever age to learn and to want to give back to the profession. So we got called together. How can we as elders help use our experience, strength, and hope to make a difference, to not quit, or not to assume that the only pathway we have is mentoring. Mentoring is wonderful, but it's not the only pathway. So I want to give you an example of what happened during one of those meetings, because we meet once a month. I have many ways of bringing together what I'm going to say to people inside myself. What I mean by that is, as a lawyer, I was trained to say something like, well, there are 3 points I have to make. And I had no clue what the 3 points were. I just used to say, I've got 3 points. And then I would just organize myself as I went along. But to the person listening, they're waiting for the 3 points. You see what I'm saying? It's very smart. And my mind is all over the place. I have complex post-traumatic stress disorder. It can go there, there, there. It can get triggered by this, this, and this. And that's not the same as what children are often diagnosed with, which is ADHD. It's complex post-traumatic stress disorder, which my mind is hypervigilant all the time. Okay, so here's my point of recovery as a trauma survivor. I have all these ways, and I bet Denise and I bet Priscilla, you have ways of presenting yourself so you sound really good. You sound like, I know what I'm doing. Thank you very much. You can count on me. I'm reliable and I know something. Yeah, I've got those too. And as a recovering trauma survivor, I have a commitment to this. I kept my own understanding deeply inside of myself because it was never safe and there was never anybody that was going to listen to me. Nobody wanted to know, and nobody asked, well, what do you think about that, Holly Elissa? Nobody ever assumed I had a thought of my own. I remember being 3 years old and saying to my parents, they used the word cheap, and I was trying to connect. What does that mean? I said, can you tell me what cheap means? Or I said that in a 3-year-old's language. And they said, you wouldn't understand. And I remember in that 3-year-old moment being enraged. Give me a try. And I dedicated myself at that point to saying, I'm going to pay attention to what's going on inside of me, whether anybody else does or doesn't. Why am I saying this? Because here I am part of this wisdom initiative, and it's expanded from 20 to like 40 people. And, a lot of people are PhDs and JDs and PhDs and all this stuff. And today we were talking about how we can be of service as mentors. And what I noticed is that one of the men, PhD guys, was asked to give us definitions of mentoring. And what did he do? He did the classic go to the research, talk about the hierarchical type of mentoring, where there's a mentor and a mentee, and one's got the expertise, the other doesn't. That's not what I know about mentoring at all. I'm a woman and I'm a trauma survivor. So I talked at this meeting totally spontaneously, totally from the heart, totally from the soul. And I said, mentoring is a relationship. And it's a relationship that two people build by first finding safety with each other and dedicating ourselves to safety and listening. Who is this person? How is this person a gift? What is this person saying to me? And remembering what the person says so that as she develops, of course, I'm developing too, because it's It's mutual development. But as she develops, I can say, do you remember, or I remember the time you told me 3 years ago that you went back to your home and this is what you felt. So I did that. Well, I'll sum this up now. I did that at this meeting. I was talking totally from the soul, totally spontaneously. I talked about things like power. I said, power is a scary thing to talk about. But for me, it can be the safest thing because if I own it and talk about it, power's in a circle. It's not a one up, one down thing. And when it comes to mentoring, honey, I can learn from a 2-year-old. 2-year-old can mentor me. And I'm going to just, I hope to be learning to the day I die and even after I take my last breath, whatever happens. And I watch people when I talk that way, and some people turn off because they can't hear it. It's nothing predictable. It doesn't fit into a category. And other people come to life. And it's the come to lives. That's where it matters. So that is an act of courage. I'm going to summarize this in 3 ways. Of course, I don't know what the 3 ways are, but I'm going to say I got 3 ways.
Okay.
One is trauma survivors have to have courage, or I have to have courage, because the message is always shut up, shut up, shut up. Don't tell the truth. Don't reveal yourself. So have the courage to reveal what's going on inside of me. This is what and spontaneously get it out. So number 2, it's courage. And 2, it is the desire to speak honestly in the moment from who I am, not who I'm told I am. And number 3, this is the only thing from the outside in, everything else is from the inside out. Number 3 is to remember not to take things personally, because I can be wounded, return to wounded in a heartbeat if I take one of those looks, the rolling of the eyes. We all know them, trauma survivors. We know when somebody's like,
Whatever.
oh Lord, there she goes again. Oh Lord. I had a guy on a WhatsApp today say to me, well, that was a no-brainer. And I started to take it in and I said, you know what? It's all about him, honey. It's nothing to do with me.
Right.
So guys, and everybody listening, there are the 3 of us, 3 different trauma survivors. And let's start right out with Priscilla and with Denise. Denise, I can feel your energy. What are you guys, how are you making sense of this? What came to you as you heard all 3 of us, or you heard me, or whatever? What came to you?
What comes to me is that we have so many similarities. And, if we go with what is common among us and discuss that, we're going to include other people that also have that common experience. And, when you can find a familiar or something familiar to grab onto, then there's something to grab onto. That's what I feel like. That it's so familiar how we react, how we view the circle of women as opposed to the power up. It's standard for us. It's our standard. And we can depend on each other for that.
And I want to ask you, can you give us examples from what Priscilla said and what I said, where you just felt, oh, I identify with that, right? Straight out, no question.
That you're not supposed to have an opinion, number 1. And that from Priscilla, mostly from Priscilla, I get that, we have similar life experiences, things that affect us, and we have similar coping skills that we can employ. And it's helpful.
Thank you. Hey, Priscilla, how about you, honey? What did you hear?
Yeah, I hear that we are growing individuals and that we learn from each other and how we can identify. Like, one thing that Denise says is that she guys, like, we're not supposed to have an opinion, but that's because that's one of the things that were planted in us from the beginning. They took our voice out, right? So because they took our voice out and they portrayed this pain in us, we have that constant imposter syndrome and feelings of whatever reasons are showing up that we're not supposed to either be in these spaces, not have an opinion. And I like one thing that Holly said, it's the three things: the courage, the desire, and to remember. And as she was saying this, I said accepting, transparency, and remember. It's not us, it's them. And it's because it's them we need to be bold and know our people. One thing that you started was like identifying our family, and like one of the things that I've learned is I have families that have blood, but who do I really consider families? I have relationships that goes beyond the blood that I have, that for me are my family.
The chosen family.
Exactly. Yes. So that's
a whole other theme. That's a great theme, is who do we choose to trust? With whom do we feel safe? That's really crucial. I want to say something before we continue, because both of you have really sparked something that's brand new in me. Both of you talked about we're not supposed to have a voice, our own voice. Supposed to keep that quiet, shut up, fit in, survive. That's the message. And each one of us had voices that were shut down, but guess what? We together were not allowed to develop a language. I'm thinking trauma survivors have our own language that we alone can develop and we alone can share. And let's do that. Let's start naming things for ourselves. I mean, trauma bonding is something that came from somebody else. It has a chewy sound to it, trauma bonding. And there are things that we can say on this program, and then the people that are listening in can say and tell us. We create today, and from here on out, our own language as trauma survivors. The language of the colonizers, the colonializers, that is not our language. I mean, I'm working with a survivor in Nairobi, and she talks a lot. As a Black person, as an African born person, she talks a lot about what it's like to have this whole colonial history. Guess what? Every trauma survivor has been colonialized. Every one of us has been told you don't exist except at my beck and call. So let us develop our own language. Let us honor it. And I'm going to try to keep track. I think I'll remove the word try, because I've learned if I say try, it's not the same as saying I will do this. I am going to right now start keeping track of new language and new insights that we have as trauma survivors. And Patricia was going to go right down the path with that. Like she was saying, now I use the word chosen family, but you might have a different way of understanding. Who is your family? This is a crucial question for everybody listening. Who is your family? You were born into a family, or you were adopted into a family. What is family, and who's your family? Yeah, Priscilla, go with it, hon. And I'm going to find my piece of paper to take notes here.
Yeah, one of the things that come to me is like why, like you said, trauma bonding was actually developed by different people, and they kind of connected different theory and different approaches to discuss what is the trauma bonding. One of the things that when I think about trauma bonding, or I'm sharing it, it's the psychological cycle and patterns of constant abuse, but also the way that us as individuals feel somewhat connected to it. One of the things that comes to me, and why I'm so passionate about trauma bonding and even speaking about it and understanding the importance, is as a trauma therapist and a person who studies trauma and neurodiversity and attachment theory, all these stuff, it really caught my attention as a person who I myself was involved in a domestic violence with my own daughter. Not because she was abusing me, she was in the domestic violence, and through her, I wanted to save her and rescue her. And this is one of the things that happened is I took it and I was like, we're not speaking as an early childhood family therapist and specialist and everything. We don't hear the trauma bond. And one of the ahas that I get is when I speak about trauma bond, it automatically connects people to explore, like, wait, I never thought that because I was raised like this is why it's important to me. And I never thought that if I believed that I deserve better, I would do better. Because in my culture, we're belief, or depending on the beliefs that are implanted, we're believed for women to be submissive. And that submission comes with a lot of expectations. And most of it's taking our voice away.
Right.
So when you guys are speaking about all these theories and all these things, and how it impacts us, I believe that trauma bond is something that needs to be spoken. I just had a graduation last Thursday from my Healing from Trauma Bond journal, and some of these ladies that were there were already seeing a therapist, and they're like, wow, ever since I started taking this, I was able to connect it and bring it back to my therapist and say, I need to explore this because I want to develop the courage. I want to develop how to feel comfortable with creating boundaries, because I'm able now to be aware of what's not normal. I'm able now to identify that it's not me, it's them. And it's okay for me to feel the way I do because of the things that I'm going through.
Do you feel like you're entering a new zone in your groups when you do these, when you facilitate these groups? Do you feel like there are new zones, by which I mean new territory, like unexplored land you're going into?
Absolutely.
Can you
Yeah.
describe that?
It feels like, so actually I have a workbook, right? A facilitator workbook that I like to follow. And then I have the weeks that we're going, but it's everything is so different. It is a different zone. Each person in that group has a story. And what I find interesting in that stories is it's reciprocal, right? I'm learning from them, they learning from me, and we grow. It's the second time I do a group, and I believe I myself become stronger and they become stronger. And I do a 3-month follow-up to see where everybody's at. And yes, it's like, honestly, and I think that of it as the flower of the lotus, right? When we get there, everybody's like, I don't know what to expect. I'm also feeling nervous. First time, there's times that could be triggers. So we do an assessment to make sure, we explore what's our plan B. But as the weeks go by, seeing them, we do this, we bring some interventions that are like with art therapy, and seeing the growth, seeing the empowerment, hearing them. I was not ready, but I got ready to come here, and seeing them excited and about it, and being able to share what they learn and how they going. It's life changing. And for me, it was. I remember before I studied trauma bonding, it was like, wait, I'm a therapist and I'm doing this. How is it that I'm okay with putting myself in this situation, because my daughter continues making these decisions? And this is where and once I connected it, it was a life changing. It was a life changing.
This is so powerful. And I feel like right connected with Denise on this too, because each of the three of us create our new forms. We create new ways of being with people so that the truth and the authenticity can come out and prevail. You have created this through your workbook, and you'll need to tell us later the name of your workbook and how you form these communities. Every time Denise goes out to work with a group of children, she's not just working with the children. That would be a world in itself. one child at a time and all those children. She is working with the parents right there. Denise, you have created a form of storytelling that if you were to talk about what you really want to see happening beneath the surface, what are you creating?
Well, what I really want is for the parent and the child to make memories together, loving, beautiful, loving memories. And so, and I cherish a parent who loves their kid. So, that's how I relate to them. When I see a loving parent, it makes me so happy, and I want to encourage it. I want to give them opportunities to further their bond.
That's beautiful. How do you know? How do you know that it's real?
I just do. I can see it. I can feel it that they love me.
I'm gonna push on you here, girl, and push
That,
back if it's not comfortable. But you just went through this whole thing about being scammed.
right.
And you learned, one of the things you learned that you said before is, I learned that I can be naive. But see, I see you as a person that knows in your heart, just as every trauma survivor knows in her heart, I know it when I see it. But I think you know even better now how to distinguish between a parent that's like a narcissist and love bombing you, like, oh, I love my baby so much, and a
Right.
person that comes to you and gets tears in her eyes because she says, my baby never did that before. What
Right.
did you do? How did you do that? So
Right.
I think you know, Denise. I believe you know. How do you, so let me just ask you, what's one way in which you know that parent is a loving, truly loving parent?
The way that they look at their child, the way that they encourage their child, the way that they touch their child. That's how I know.
And they want to hear the child's voice.
Yes, they do. They want to hear the child's voice. They want to see their child connect to someone else, another adult, another safe adult.
I'm going to build on that right now because my work is with adults now. And I created for myself the interactive keynote. And what is that? I mean, I can be up before 3,000, 4,000 people or 50 people. And the keynote, it's fascinating because keynote is just like anything else. People have expectations. And I was working with this woman, Dr. Paula Jordy Bloom, who was a biggie. She died in the last 5 years, and she was a real biggie in our field. And what she said was God's word. And I was going to give the closing keynote at her conference. And we were having just a dinner with special speakers. And somebody said, so what's a keynote? And I was ready to say, here's what I creating a form. Here's what I've created as a keynote. And Dr. Paula Jordy Bloom, as Dr. Paula Jordy Bloom said, it must do this, it must do that, it must do this, it must begin this way. It was a form that she was looking for. And I just started smiling my ass off. Because I said, Paula, I love it. I love that you can do that you can feel aligned with this whole body of knowledge. My whole life, I never felt aligned with any body of knowledge. What somebody else was preaching to me was somebody else's word. And so when I went to law school, I wasn't going to learn that just as the word. I had to make my own separate peace with that stuff. Just like Denise had to make her own separate peace with being a teacher and what that whole thing about discipline, creative discipline is. You made that your own. And you, Priscilla, you studied trauma, but you made it your own and you wrote that book to make it your own. So I think there's something here. I'm going to write that down, making it our own. And now I want to say, here's how I made the keynote my own. Because I have complex post-traumatic stress disorder, which means my mind can flatline, because I have panic attacks, which means I can get scared to death and my throat can close up. I can't breathe. What the hell am I doing as a keynoter? I was in Boston keynoting And I had one of those experiences where I had all of this information. I knew the audience and I could present it in a way that was fascinating. I knew how to do that one, the sage on the stage. But my mind went splat because I was talking about abuse and neglect and the law. And all of a sudden I started feeling it. And I felt like I was going to go down between the baseboards of the stage that I was on. I'm marching across the stage, but it still was a stage. And I had a choice to make. And in that moment, I could have run off the stage because I felt so ashamed of myself, because that's a trauma survivor's response. If we feel vulnerable in front of people, no, don't reveal anything because you'll get beaten down. But I chose instead, with my quivering voice, to say, I am the person about whom we are speaking. I am the person who was beaten until I blacked out. I was the child that was sexually used by my father. I was, and I am today that person. So I'm going to now do the rest of this keynote from the standpoint, not the standpoint, but from the heartful place of, I'm speaking to you right through my own truth. And I think at that point I did something which I was just starting to do. And I know that Priscilla and Denise, you've done this your whole lives. When you're working with a group of people, whether it's 3-year-olds or 95-year-olds, I invite those people to get involved. And that's what I mean by an interactive keynote. Now I did it in part out of fear, because I needed to buy myself some time to think about where are we right now. And if I can get them talking with each other and hear what they're coming from, I can learn and I can respond to where they are. And that's my whole thing is about connection. When people are connected, we learn and we grow. And if we feel disconnected, we're shutting down. It's no surprise that everybody knows. If you lecture, people hear 7%. That's all they remember. But if we get engaged, we remember, give the person a fish or help the person learn to fish. So in that moment, I believe I said to people, would you turn to each other only if you feel safe, talk about only what you feel you want to share. And I think I asked them a question about how something safe, but still true, about how they have, what their experience is with abuse and neglect in their own programs, so they could join it saying, well, I've got this child, as opposed to, well, I'm a survivor. But that was the beginning of it. And ever since then, I have developed a keynote, which I don't go more than like 5 minutes without saying, and how about you? Where are you on this? Or saying, would you turn to the person next to you? Or saying, would you stand up and just, if you feel safe, go through this exercise and then talk about it with each other. Because why am I doing that? Well, in part because my voice was I did not have a voice. I had it, but I kept it down so far. And I know if people can relate their voice to what's going on in the moment, that's when healing comes. Now, it's really interesting. I'll close with this. I'm going to give a keynote in a couple of weeks in Tampa to this annual conference. They want me to do a keynote, but what the person who's in charge of this said to me is, we don't want you to be interactive. We just want to hear what you have to say. We just want to hear your wisdom. And there it is. And the way I'm seeing that as a healing thing is for me to actually be able to speak from my heart and soul and believe that what I've got to say is valuable enough, then I can speak for 10 minutes, 20 minutes straight. When I was asked at Pacific Oaks to give their, what's it called when they graduate?
Graduation.
Yeah, but what's the name of this? What's the speaker's things? Graduation address. Oh my God, here I am giving the graduation address at Pacific Oaks, which is this great early childhood place. And they want my written speech. Honey, I never write an effing speech. But I wrote one. And as I looked out at these hundreds of people, the parents from Mexico, from Guatemala, from China, from all these places. They're so proud to see their children getting master's degrees and baccalaureate degrees. Like the tears are in my eyes. I took that speech I had written out and I went, and they watched the note, the pages come down like this. I said, I am so proud of you. I am so proud of you. How many of you are aunties? How many of you are grandmas? How many of you are brothers? How many of you are babies of, and like everybody's jumping up and down because there it is, Priscilla. It was the families. How many of you are friends? How many of you are fellow travelers? And once that happened, that was when the connections began. So I know you guys are hearing and feeling things inside of yourself that you feel, but it's creating new forms. Each one of us has done that. And when I created that interactive keynote in my own style, that's me. And when somebody basically said, shut up, I don't want to hear that, I'm thinking, let me give them the benefit of the doubt. What they're really asking me is to say, in my own voice, what have I learned? And that's how I write books. Yeah, Priscilla.
Yeah, I want to share something that you guys both said, and I think it's so important in the work that we do, right? It is that Denise, like when she is in this interactive reading and playing with the children, the connection she sees, right? And true, as a person who goes out and does consultation for early childcare and see children's, one of the things that I do notice is not only do you see and are able to see this priceless connection and give it, but children and here and then I heard Elissa said how in her space, she was like, I want you guys to do this together because, so I don't know if you guys see where I'm going through, like people learn through connections, right? And when I hear is through connections, we heal. Because little do you know is that sometimes they're like, oh, I want them to have a safe place. But one of the things that I'm learning as I'm working with childcare educators is how do we teach children how to say please and thank you, or how to have conversations with their parents because they have such a busy life that they can now say, wait, this educator is helping my child. And now he's saying thank you. I've seen parents say, he kept on saying thank you. And that made me feel so good because we don't say thank you. And when he say thank you, mom, that made my heart melt. So we're teaching through connection.
Right.
You got the creativity. Holly is doing the interactive keynote, and I love that. And one of the things that I was resonating with when Holly was speaking and you, Denise, is our story, our valuables. One of the things that I find myself sharing almost every day, do not allow your current situation determine all the places and all the things you could do, not just with what had happened to you, but how you're going to grow and make it grow in knowing your people. And that's it happens to me because as a first generation graduate and achieving some of the things that I have achieved, I have to relearn now who do I not, because here I am and I don't have, but does it mean that this is where we need to stay, right? How do I still tell my people, no, let's come up? So when I hear Elissa saying, I saw all this Central Americans, most likely, because that's what kind of like what you mentioned, graduating, in my head, I'm like breaking intergenerational beliefs.
Right.
And we're making a difference. And how do we create that legacy that has chased us from years and decades ago? So this is beautiful, our story. And it's so funny that you say, Elissa, that they told you, I don't want it to be interactive. I believe, and please, I'm sorry, and I hope if they hear me, not to take it offensive, but I find it as when people tell you not to be interactive because they scare that interaction is gonna break them. Because have you seen these people come at you like very firm, and as soon as you see them interactive, you see my father. He's always very firm. And when I saw him, hey, let's play basketball, he became a child. And I think people are afraid to bring in that inner person inside, and we need to feel comfortable. And our story has value. Without our stories, people don't understand what's the need and why people are upset, why people are sad. And yeah.
We are terrified of the truth coming out unless we're in control of the truth coming out.
Right.
Denise, does what Priscilla and I are saying make sense to you?
Yes, totally. I just remember when I was at a group with you with probably 5,000, maybe 3,000, I don't know. But when when you when you told the truth, I knew I can tell the truth too. And when I saw people receiving the truth about trauma, about emotional intelligence, I just I just loved it that that topic, you know, is so important to early childhood educators. I mean, we have to be aware of what these children, where these children come from, where these adults come from, where these peers come from. I just loved it so much that when you told the truth about your experience, and it was freeing. And so I believe that when I tell my truth, that that also has a freeing effect on those around me.
And what does it take? I hear you, girl. And what does it take for you to be able to tell the truth? Like this program, anybody on earth, including Donald Trump, could be listening. And here we are telling things that if we look at the world from the inside out, as opposed to the outside in, things make real sense to me. But from the outside in, there's judgment. You know, we're saying things that we could be put in jail for, according to the current administration.
Right.
So how do you feel it's okay for you, particularly right here, right now, to say the truth?
Yeah, even when I was when I got scammed, and so I went to story time on Friday, and I told everyone what happened to me, and I told them I am a trauma survivor, and I was triggered into magical thinking, and that is how I got scammed. That is how the scam developed, and it just it felt good, and I also could see that they know me now better, you know, that they know me authentically, and that they can really love me, not, you know, the entertainer that, you know, entertains them every week, but the real genuine Denise, and that they cared, and I could feel that care.
So maybe a year ago on this program, Priscilla, I don't think you heard it, but we had a person on who had worked with Denise. And she said, and Denise, I'm going to remind you of this. She said, well, we all know Teacher Denise, the quintessential professional. But then do you remember what she said to you? She said, and also we want to know the vulnerable Denise.
Right.
And that's what you bring to this program. And that's what you took to the story time. And you know what's perfect? Like according to what Priscilla was saying, we all have story, and we only tell our story if we believe we're going to be heard.
Right. And that we're safe in saying it.
That's right, honey.
I like what you said, safe and saying it, right? Because one of the things that, like, I feel comfortable here saying my story. I don't see the listeners. I don't know who's going to hear it, but I know some people may have, if I was to say it in certain spaces, they may actually, they have criticized my life, right?
Right.
Interesting.
Right.
The same people that have criticized me is the same people that are now asking for help.
Right.
And it happens, right? But what I continue to believe is continue to model, continue to show people that they're not going to that you're not defined by the mistakes that you have made. You're not defined about the things that people did to you that were out of your control. You're defined about being resistant and knowing where to go and where to share your story, and making sure that when you're sharing your story, it's a safe place, that if they try to use it against you, you know how you're going to defend yourself. Because there's times that people could use your story to cause more harm.
Right. We are on earth to define ourselves. And as survivors, we are given so many definitions of ourselves. And those are what's locked in definition. Thou shalt not. Thou shalt not. As a woman, thou shalt not take a leadership position. Thou shalt not. My father, one of the worst things he could say to me, my father was a narcissist, quintessential narcissist. And when I was an adult, my daughter was sitting next to me in the car, and my father we were talking on the phone. It was not on speakerphone, but I said something very direct, which was not permissible. Not having a voice was not permissible. So to say, this is what I need when I was taught to be needless and wantless, no. So he said, and I could just in a heartbeat show Vincenzo Bruno's voice saying, "You're acting like a CEO." That was the worst cut he could do. The worst cut. And I said, I am the CEO of my own organization. And then I said, we're not going to keep talking because you're not being respectful. And so I'm going to stop this conversation. And if we can talk respectfully, good. My daughter was sitting there. Like me, thanks, Denise. My daughter was raised by a narcissist. And she has endured all kinds of stuff because that's the way she was raised. Why am I saying she was raised by a narcissist? Because during our divorce, she was assigned to my husband. I had more time with my son. So she was essentially raised by a narcissist. And she said to me, "Mom, I didn't know Grandpa Jim," he of course took an anglicized name, Jim Bruner, to pass, because he couldn't anyway. Man whose first language was Italian would never speak it. Never, ever speak his native tongue. Talk about losing your voice. Anyway, what we do, and Priscilla's pointing this out too, and Denise, you are, what we do affects all others. And what we do, sometimes I've been disowned by members of my family for telling the truth. And it hurt because the most basic need we have isn't to have food and shelter. Denise points this out really well. That's about a traditional type of way of looking at the world. No, the most basic need we have as spiritual beings is to be connected from our true self to true self.
Absolutely.
So guys, each one of you, what do you want to say in closing to our friends, or even asking them a question? Because Denise is right. She did the 2 fingers, which means
2 minutes. Now 1.
I just want to, it will be interesting to see what the people that are listening to us feel about what's happening and what they're learning and what areas they would like us to explore or help them out. I'm open to answering questions. So if they want, they can send an anonymous question. And how do we interact more and engage? We want to be part of their healing process too. So why not? What can I say? You're not alone. Let's walk together.
You're not alone. That's what I want to say to you.
Go ahead, Denise.
Yep, we believe you. You're not alone. And truth is truth.
And I'm going to end with the poet who said, "Beauty is truth, and truth beauty. That is all ye know on earth, and all ye need to know." So everybody listening, shine through your own beauty. Beauty begins the moment we start to believe in ourselves. And we will see you next week.
Yes, we will.
Come join us, guys. If you can join us just be in the chat, just be here.
Yep.
Or show up in person. However you choose to show up, we want to be connected with you to the extent you want to be connected. This has been a beautiful program, my friends. We're going to have to stop it, so we do the hour. Thank you. Denise, what's up, hon?
Yes. Stop recording.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. Thanks, everybody. We hope to see you next week and hear from you. In the meantime, you can reach out to any one of us, and we're going to have to get that up online so you can see it. But just take our names, and you will find us. All right. So stop recording. Are you sure? You bet I am.